Hello, everybody, and welcome to Turn to Page, Season 6, Book 2 of Choose Cthulhu at the Mountains of Madness with you, Rhapsody.
I've never more regretted having a name that doesn't end in the "oo" suffix.
You
Not
blew it.
suffix, rather. "Oo" phoneme? The "oo" sound. It's so easy to rhyme, whereas Rhapsody, E, what do you rhyme E with? Only most words?
Only lots of words, you see? I don't know.
I mean, you kind of cornered the game by having Rito, so you've got O as the end of the short, and then also Retromation gives you the ability to incorporate all of the Shon ending. There's so many of them.
Yeah, like train station.
I wasn't even thinking of that one. There's even one more than I thought.
Stan Rat Nation. That was a
I was thinking of that one. Yeah, so
that's one of my favorite tweets I've ever gotten. Or it was like, I don't know if it was a tweet or a comment, but it was someone just left a message. It just said 3 separate words: Stan Rat Nation, and then there was an the emoji of the rat, and then an emoji of an American flag, and it lives in my brain forever. I love
3 truer words and 2 truer emojis were never spoken / written.
It's true. I am converting the name of my audience to Rat Nation. I'm planting my Rat Nation flag. Anyways, this has nothing to do with
Gettysburg Address could never hope to eclipse
this speech I gave at the beginning of this at the beginning of this unrelated podcast, where everyone's listening and going, "What the hell are they talking about? I'm here for the big scary squid dragon."
And, whoa, let me tell you, there will be big scary squid dragon. We are
true.
Choosing Cthulhu.
We are choosing Cthulhu, indeed. At the Mountains of Madness, Steve Jackson Games. Apparently, both Steve Jackson Games and Steve Jackson wrote fighting fantasy books, which just kind of both separately have wrote fighting fantasy books, which is just ties everything together in such a extra wild way, because
that's why
there's already confusion between those. Yeah,
exactly. That's why this Steve Jackson had to go and marry someone with the last name Games and hyphenate it, so he's Steve Jackson Games now.
I really, really want my last name to be hyphenated with Games. That's so good. Oh, that's like a 90s movie about like a video game tournament, and like and one of the kids actually has like Games hyphenated in there.
Wait, you're the Sarah Games?
Yeah, the Games dynasty.
My dad invented this game.
The dad always did, and he's always mysteriously disappeared. Anyways,
100%.
You may not find their missing father, but what madness will you find on the back of the page? Because the Beware page, or I guess what we'll call the Beware page, is a complete repeat of last time. So why don't you hit us with the excerpt on the back here?
Beware. Because these are the things to beware in this book. Miskatonic University has invited you to lead an expedition to a remote and dangerous part of Antarctica. We saw in the last one exactly how well those go. Fame and prestige are on the line. But something is wrong. What horrible secrets are hidden in those remote polar regions? What is the meaning of the strange fossilized prints on the ice? And what happened to the last expedition?
Fame and prestige? You mean we can be a movie star and buy a bike? This game this book has it, dude. Oh yeah.
I do love that, like, we always want, like, the gold standard of outcome as it was set by many of the earlier seasons was you become rich and famous. And in this one, like, I will settle for slightly sane, like still slightly sane.
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
let's see how we get there.
The introduction. In this crazy world, you are what the rest would deem a boring subject. Okay, well, so we've already, as far as I'm concerned, that's already, we just lost. They
really?
Killed us. They just killed us.
I thought you were about to say we just won, living a boring life in the Cthulhu mythos.
True. But I meant like, what a burn, they like were dead. But you are a middle-aged university professor, 5 feet, 11 inches tall, and you weigh 175 pounds. The kind of person who doesn't receive a second glance standing in line at the supermarket. I mean, that's a win. However, you are smart, the type that usually avoids taking risks. And the few strong emotions you felt in your life are limited to getting a raise from time to time. Okay, sad. And to heated arguments about geology on Saturday mornings. Oh my. Geology has never awakened in anyone any greater passion than what you'd expect from the cold and unexpressive rocks you study. Generally, this is an absolute clinical takedown of us.
Me, Dr. Gregory Critchett, is opening this book for the first time after earning my PhD in geology. Of course, I just wanted to read. What?
I felt stronger things like well, time to go back to school.
Someone looked at me twice in a grocery line once. Sure, it was because I sneezed, but they did.
Okay. Never awaken in anyone a greater passion than what you expect from the cold and unexpressive rocks that you study. Generally, they do not interest the public beyond articles in some science magazines, and mentions that other professors, as boring as you, might take a look during their long conferences. On January 11th, 1930, you receive a confusing and rushed letter from Dr. Peabody, an engineer with a profile as low as yours. It's so mean. In which I thought that the not Endless Quest, Grail Quest. The Grail Quest books were pretty rude to the player character insert. This is wild.
Dr. Peabody is almost as ugly as you are.
I know. In which Dr. Peabody told you he had raised enough funds to finance his drilling apparatus. It took several readings for you to comprehend his excitement. Page 1.
Dear friend, first, I apologize if, due to the emotion that overtakes me in this moment, fragments of my exposition are not entirely clear to you, but the unexpected sometimes happens. As you well know, the drilling apparatus I was working on was a unique project, owing to the lightness and capacity to combine the ordinary artesian drill principle with the principle of the small circular rock drill, which will enable drillings as deep as 5,000 feet. And so, the moment of truth has arrived. We have obtained the financing we hoped for, and we're working on production as of right now. I know that, much like my own, your heart must be racing right now. I beg you to take a seat, for this is not the only news. You see, Miskatonic University has not only found a private investor for this fabulous mechanical progress, but will also send us on an expedition into the Antarctic continent to test it. We shall surely try to secure deep-level specimens of rock and soil, perfectly preserved prehistoric rocks. Oh, the excitement! The university wants you, my dear friend, to lead this expedition and bring to the American Museum as many fossilorific rocks, revealing the primal life of that forgotten iced world as is possible. For their inalterability throughout eons-long darkness will uncover important knowledge about the past of our planet. Frank H. Peabody, Miskatonic University, Arkham, Massachusetts.
This was not how you anticipated the start of your usual Saturday afternoon. I don't think that'll be relevant, but hey. But there is no doubt that your life has radically changed. So now you must make some decisions. You could await more news about Peabody and Miskatonic University on page 57, try and gather more information about who organizes this expedition on page 46, or try and find some data about the Antarctic on page 92. Or go to Wikipedia and type in Antarctica.
Just gonna type in rocks. Rocks? It's rocks ?
Yeah. You joke, but last week I went to Wikipedia and I just typed in wolves, and I was on a rabbit hole that lasted for like 5 days. Like, so
damn.
I was so hooked. And I bet you the page on rocks is bigger, so
we absolutely cannot introduce either of these people to Google.
Yeah.
We'll lose the story entirely. I wonder, should we be... Because, like, we know that this is a mythos setting, but this character, the person we're playing, does not. He is humdrum, boring, etc., so on and so forth.
He would not be so excited about drilling 5,000 feet into the earth if he knew that cosmic beasts existed.
Exactly. But if his whole thing is like rocks rock, that's like absolutely. I wonder if we should, for our first like approach to this story, engage on the level of being this extremely boring, middle-aged 5'11" man.
Absolutely.
Would we try and find some more data about the Antarctic first then?
I think we probably would.
I'll meet you on 92.
Antarctic. We are looking at the Wikipedia page, aren't we? Antarctica was the last continent on Earth to be discovered and populated. This officially took place barely 300 years ago, although its existence was known since antiquity, for the Greeks had already named it Terra Australis Incognita. Antarctica is such a dangerous and hostile region that no human settlements except for temporary research bases have been established in the territory. Therefore, should something happen to you, there would be no chance of getting help. Okay, well, they don't say that on Wikipedia. Well, I might edit it to that. I might edit it after this. There's no record.
I'm just going to add it to every page that is based on a location. It's just like, M&M store in Times Square.
there's no chance of getting help here. That's just a Yelp review. I was trying to get a custom selection of M&M colors for my bachelor party, and they would not help. Okay, well, they did help me, but I didn't like their tone. Well, actually, their tone was fine, but I didn't like their shirt.
There's no chance of getting unmarred help.
Enter at your own risk. You may not leave this godforsaken M&M cavern. There's no record of any species that can survive the deadly drops of temperature of the M&M store, which can reach as low as negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit.
Maybe even lower in some of the most remote regions.
And only flocks of birds and some big mammals like leopard seals coexist with different species of penguins, never getting far away from the coast. What interests you the most is that many Antarctic researchers repeat,
if one has an established plan, it is more sensible to try and accomplish it to the extent that is possible. An abrupt change of plans may result in death in a place where there's no way of restocking. No one will look for you where you shouldn't be.
Left by James Johnson, Massachusetts, on Yelp. You can resume your normal life on page 41, or maybe you'd like to investigate a bit more about your mysterious benefactors on page 46, which I will note is a page we could have gone to last time.
Yes. How do we feel about I'd like if in the roleplay of this character we trade off which decision we think this character would make, and I put my foot fully on the pedal last time. Which of these options screams geology to you?
Resume your normal life on page 41, for sure.
Let's do it.
Apologies, just had to set up my paint that closed for my elaborate web. With your nerves on end and the pressing feeling that you're being observed day and night, you let the days go by without leaving your home. Finally, on the second day of September 1930, the moment you were waiting for comes. A brief letter from Miskatonic University that calls you to leave immediately. The most remarkable thing is the list of your traveling companions and the equipment that you'll need. You show up at Boston Bay with the intentions of meeting the rest of the crew, and Professor Pabodi explains to you all the details of the trip. You'll leave in 2 ships, the Arkham, commanded by Captain J.B. Douglas, and the fast brig Miskatonic, commanded by Georg Thorfinson, both veteran whalers in the Antarctic waters. The rest of the crew does not take as long to arrive at the bay, or doesn't take long to arrive at the bay. After greeting your university colleagues, you board the Arkham, and almost blinded by your excitement, you head south, leaving the uninhabited world slowly behind you. The inhabited world slowly behind you. I keep on reading things as the literal opposite. Leaving the inhabited world slowly behind you, Continue your trip on page 78. On November 7th, you lose sight of the American continent. The next day, you catch a glimpse of your distant destination, the cones of Mount Erebus and Mount Terror. Is that a real mountain?
I'll look it up. You continue.
You're gonna get a ride at an amusement park.
It totally is a real mountain. Extinct volcano.
Wow.
3,200 meters tall.
It's like one step removed from calling it Mount Splody. Just
Yeah.
it's just
Mount
like
Murder.
Mount Big Volcano Mountain. Just like, I don't know, just call it what it is, I guess. In the afternoon,
I think a lot of things are names that, but their name is just, what they are in a different language.
Yeah.
And then...
Big Mountain in Latin. It's just,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is true. In the afternoon, you leave behind the dangerous and narrow paths between the glaciers and step into McMurdo Bay. The two volcanoes observe you from their height of 10,000 feet, filling your hearts with the feelings evoked by their names. A dark and abyssal fear. Down the barren coast, thousands of grotesque, abnormally large penguins squawk and flap their flippers. Grotesque penguins seems like something that can happen to me.
No, they're all adorable. As a matter of fact, I've seen the documentary Happy Feet.
Yeah.
And one of them sounds like Robin Williams. That's the one I like the most.
Oh my god! I want to go. While fat seals are visible on the water, either swimming or sprawling across large cakes of slowly drifting ice. The boats will remain anchored here, and their wireless outfits will be your link to civilization while you step into the mysterious frozen regions. You don't even want to think about what would occur if something bad happened to them. You'd be doomed to a slow and lonely death. You unload all your drilling apparati, dogs, sledges, tents, provisions, gasoline tanks, experimental ice melting outfit, cameras, airplane parts, M&Ms, and most importantly, 3 small portable wireless outfits.
Besides those in the plains.
Capable of communicating with the Arkham from any of the parts of the Antarctic continent. Commence your Antarctic adventure at page 61. You start to grow aware of the fact that the adventure has begun and of the dangers that you're facing. Although you were wrapped up warmly, gusts of steam escape your mouths with every breath, and even your eyelashes begin to freeze. With everything on the line, it's time to make really important decisions. As the chief academic, the choice of what to do next lies with you. The answer is quite clear. Oh, no. You have to travel
dire.
southwards. That's dire. Uh-oh. You have to travel southwards to the closest glacier and establish the first drilling post. You think that this is the ideal place to look for fossils. The question that is raised is whether you should set up an intermediate security camp in the frozen plateaus or travel directly, forcing the planes to fly to the base of the glacier itself. The weather's nice enough, warm even, to try and cross it. But on the other hand, an abrupt change of temperature could put an end to your trip before it's even started. The biologist of the group, Professor Lake, approaches you and asks,
Well, what will you do now? The weather seems stable enough to try and advance as much as possible, but in the Antarctic, this can change in a matter of minutes.
If you decide not to rely on the weather and establish an intermediate camp, go to page 636. Oh, if on the other hand, you think nothing bad is going to happen, forcing a flight of more than 400 miles southwards, take off on page 72.
I mean, I felt better about it until that sentence.
Yeah, it's a bit rude.
It's like when a DM asks you, like, are you sure
Really?
you want to punch the dragon in the face while it's sleeping on level 1? It's like,
Do
okay,
you think
I get what you're saying here. I punch.
Yeah. You happy with that decision?
Yeah, I'd already rolled up a second character anyway. Let's go. I mean, an intermediate camp is definitely the decision for this man.
That is, you're right. For a man whose most exciting points of his entire life are raises. Commodities are scarce in such a dangerous region. Precautions must be taken. Using half of the fuel reserve, you fly 20 miles into deserted territory with the intention of landing somewhere on an icy clearing. In a couple of hours, 3 of the 4 planes have landed, and Professor Lake's deviates somewhat from its course. Sorry, Professor Lake, I didn't mean to. Leads you off course due to magnetic interference. You start to worry when the night falls without news from the professor. and the temperature plummets to lower than negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The strong winds and the odd magnetic anomaly detected by the professor before getting lost interfere with your wireless. Every hour narrows the chances of finding them alive. So you send 2 groups of 6 sledges to the last known coordinates of the plane, for risking a takeoff now would lead to their certain death. What happens in the following days defies all reason. It's less than a day-long trip to McMurdo Bay, and you barely have made it to the frontier of the frozen continent. You find yourself wholly isolated and disoriented. Weeks go by, the weather becomes more hostile. There's no trace of any prior expeditions. Maybe one day, a group of adventurers will find your frozen corpse hugging a silent transmitter. The end? ? I think it's a pretty confident the end ! But
Yeah, absolutely.
If you say so.
We are the ended.
Yeah. So this is, I'd say, canonically where we would end for the boring guy.
Yep.
That's that. So now maybe we.
Scroll 1 page down. Hardcore.
Is there like a picture for it?
Yeah. Page
Whoa.
37.
Yep. Legit.
Yep.
It
has that
a corpse.
similar kind of. I don't know, a bit gruesome, but I don't know how many of you have seen footage from Everest where people
I have.
previous expeditions that didn't make it. Like, it has the exact effect of all of the clothing and material perfectly preserved. Nothing about the environment has changed those. And then the body just gets drier and drier.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Yeah. Well,
Let's go to page
72 would be where we would, yes, exactly, with reckless abandon, head into the snow.
Despite the almost unanimous reports regarding the terrible winds and blizzards that blew over the plateau, you resolved to do it without midway bases, risking the loss of your apparatus, but saving time considerably so as to take advantage of the Arctic summer. On November 21st, during a 4-hour non-stop flight just below you at frozen ground level, a completely inexplicable and brutal fog storm breaks out. You effortlessly fly over it, thankful to have taken a risk to have left your provisions behind. Huge summits watch you from the west, while the unfathomable silence echoes the sound of your engines. The wind only bothers you moderately, and the radio direction finders help you cross what little opaque fog you find at those heights. Finally, you enter the eon's dead southern confines. Far away to the east, you can see the summit of Mount Nansen, which rises to almost 9,000 feet. Could have been 9,001. Come on. The south base, as you call this spot of the glacier, is set up without difficulties, and soon you start to work with the fast drills. Continue your investigation on page 107. You spend the first weeks looking for the best drilling spots while Peabody and 2 of the graduates, Gedney and Carroll, ascend the summit of Mount Nansen. I don't know. That squad in that mountain feels very, very I just came up with it to me, you know?
Gedney and Carroll?
Carroll, Mount Nansen? The experimental drillings...
I'm going to have to write those down. I'm never going to remember that.
Yeah. The experimental drillings reveal the existence of solid ground just 12 feet down through the ice, and Peabody's drilling apparatus reaches places where no previous explorer had ever thought of securing mineral specimens. The rocks obtained are so rare and different from what is known to date about the Antarctic that it makes you think that you're standing on a plateau that constituted another independent and smaller continent, something totally impossible. Without a doubt, the greatest surprise comes the day you find a curious, triangular, striated, triangle striated marking about a foot in a diameter which Lake, the biologist of the expedition, pieced together from 3 fragments of slate brought up from a deep blasted aperture in a cavern.
I think we should examine this fossil most thoroughly,
Professor Lake says excitedly.
This might be the most important discovery of the history of humanity!
The rock. Me when I've found a fun new, liquid to put in my cereal. Like, it's just, come on, let's dial it back a bit. It's like, maybe it's a good combo, but like, come on now.
This was me changing to oat milk from lactose milk and being like, oh, this is actually great.
I love oat milk, like, legitimately. It's good.
Legitimate. I've got something in my fridge. Like, it's a condensed oat milk, and it's like sweet, and you just put it on it's incredible.
Anyways, very good. I would like some now. Thank you. The rock is undoubtedly ancient, possibly more than 60 million years old, but it's still just a fossil. and you say as much to the biologist.
I don't think you understand. If I'm not mistaken, these striated... Oh, sorry. This is... Wrong voice, and just because it's completely opposite, I will note it. That's supposed to be lake.
I don't think you understand. If I'm not mistaken, these striated markings have organic origin.
Organic.
You ask, incredulous.
You mean tubular fossils like seaweed?
I'm afraid they are even more incomprehensible. We need to change the original course of our expedition and head west over the mountains to find new samples.
If you wish to accede to Professor Lake's desires, you can send an expedition to the Queen Alexandra Range on page 55. If, on the other hand, you decide to stick to the original plan and overfly the South Pole, go to page 104 with your whole team. Did literally tell us if you're going to Antarctica, you should make sure to stick to your original plan. Like it said that. It said that word for word.
I like the idea of sticking with our original plan. I don't trust this guy.
It's true.
He's
And also
too excited about rocks.
Yeah. All right, 104. Tactfully, in order to avoid confrontation, me at the grocery store, you tell Lake that this fragment might be anything and that splitting up the group and the provisions might be fatal. Lake does not agree and complains angrily while he circles the tent that has been reinforced by blocks of hard snow.
Oh, you don't understand! We just found a fossil that can change the history of humanity! It's not the time to be intimidated!
He seems very anxious and finishes his sentences with a scream.
Maybe we should find someone at Arkham University for help. Someone who's really qualified to make decisions regarding really important findings. Ah!
You're somewhat taken aback by the biologist's words, but decide to stick to your original plan. You order that the camp can be taken down early the next morning. You leave in search of the South Pole, opposite Lake's requested direction on page 3. It's probably just a rock.
I mean, it's not like we have any knowledge of any recent experiences that might have occurred in this area, specifically looking down deep into the ice.
Yeah. I want to go through the whole book as just a guy who's doing his rock job. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Never interact with... I mean, we still have not interacted with anything
in canon.
really weird.
In canon, we've noticed nothing weird except a fog, which could just be Antarctica being Antarctica, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Despite Lake's angry complaints, you convince the group to stick as closely as possible to the original plan, at least until the goals of the expedition are met and the fossils and geological specimens can be secured, which was what Pabodi's drilling apparatus was built for. Your prudence provides... Your prudence proves providential. Okay. And after a bumpy journey, the 4 apparatus land safely on the icy belt that subdivides the continent.
Rito, I have to confess something.
Yes.
If I wrote that sentence, your prudence proves providential, I'd be so proud of myself. My toxic trait is I would tell people. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, I wrote today.
Yeah.
I love it.
Always announce your alliterations. You gotta.
Absolutely.
The new camp meets your expectations for your expeditions perfectly, except for the constant complaints from Lake, who assures you that you're missing out on something great and insists to the base camp to let him split up the expedition. Finally, on January 11th, with the express approval of Miskatonic University, Lake is allowed to explore the West Mountain Range, while you continue drilling as closely as possible to the South Pole. Taking the lead in this new expedition, Professor Lake decides to take the planes and a team of 11 men with him. Only Professor Pabodi and 5 other students remain with you in camp. In theory, it should be enough to continue the investigation until March, when your return, as well as the start of summer, is expected. Continue the investigations on page 20.
He took all of the planes? All 4 planes?
It's pretty greedy.
So he took 11 men. So team, 11 men, 4 planes. So they have 1 plane per 3 people. Us and our other 5 people have 0 planes per 6. Make it make sense.
Man, we should have went into math instead of rocks. We got
Exactly,
screwed.
because then we would know that... okay, so they should have 2 planes, right? one for 6 people each, right? And then we should have one plane, one for 6 people, and then we throw the other plane away because it's ruining the numbers.
Absolutely. Lake's expedition sends you periodic wireless reports so you can broadcast them to Arkham, and from there to the outside world. The first messages are a warning about the dangers of the trip. Sorry. It's so funny to me. Please let me go to the mountain, please. First message, it's so scary here. Shut up. They tell you how soon they'll need you to provide them with geological knowledge. However, the actual moment that makes you wish you'd gone with them comes 6 hours later.
10:05, night. After a terrible snowstorm, we've seen a mountain range. May equal the Himalayas, higher than any hitherto seen. It extends from left to right as far as the eye can see. Smoky cones and black peaks, strong wind hinders approach. I'm flying over the mountain range with Carol. I don't expect to cross the highest peaks in this weather. The summits are gigantic and really strange, seemingly made out of some pre-Cambrian slate. Odd formations of impressive geometrical forms are on the slopes. Carol, of course, believes that they are carved stones, but that's impossible. We have been able to see an abundance of surprisingly regular caverns.
Half an hour later, they inform you of their return to camp to rest. Periodic communications were set for every 12 hours unless something extraordinary should happen. Without delay, you also get to sleep on page 23. In the morning and in the following days, the reports come one after another, and you are sure that you are erred by staying in the camp.
Attention! Many striated tracks, like the ones found in the archaic slate, showed that it originated more than 6,000 million years ago. Highlight the importance of this discovery in the press. This is to biology what Einstein was to physics. It seems to point that, as I suspected, the Earth has witnessed one or many cycles of organic life prior to the one we know now. It evolved when the planet was young and uninhabitable for any protoplasmic structure or form of life. This leads to the question of when, where, and how that development occurred.
Just an hour later, you receive the following statement.
Found an odd piece of rock. It looks like a 5-pointed starfish with broken edges. It doesn't seem natural. There are small dotted groups of inscriptions. When we have lights, Mills and I will enter into this underground world.
With this last transmission, madness breaks loose. Both Pabodie and Miskatonic University request more and more details, begging you to meet with Lake as soon as possible to double-check the results of that thing's age. However, you are not certain leaving the base hastily would be wise. If you want to leave hastily, turn to page 52. If you want to leave immediately, turn to page 52. If you think it'd be wiser to wait until you have more information about the discovery, turn to page 98.
I love that you changed the word immediately to hastily for the joke, but immediately is actually sooner than hastily.
That's so true. Well, you're not certain that leaving the base hastily would be wise, so you might as well, because you need to be doing it faster. That's why.
Good point, well made. 52. I legitimately think that 98 is again like but I'm trying not to use the meta of knowing this world. Someone's just written us about odd rocks. We're a geologist.
Yeah.
Would we be like the rocks call?
I mean, you know, do you want to run? You want to go?
I picked the last direction.
Let's go.
I remember.
Let's run.
Let's go.
Let's do it. I just want to know.
What?
Wait. Holy retcon. You give notice to the pilot of the 5th plane, the one reserved for emergencies, to come and pick you up from McMurdo with reinforcements, and you start loading the equipment. Lake's support team consisted of you and 9 other men, 7 dogs, and a sledge. You carry weapons, provisions, fuel, and replacement parts for emergencies. Pabodie will be able to operate his drilling apparatus, and you can put an end to the mystery of Lake's impossible findings. The plane glides to page 85.
I just had a wild, like Berenstain Bears kind of, like that effect of on the first page, I was certain the name was Pabodi, and then every time after that, it was written as Padobi, which just inverts the D and the B. And every single time I was like, was I insane? I'm getting gaslighted by this book. Like, did I read it wrong in the first instance? And now we're back here and it's Pabodi again. Unless these are two different guys. Like, oh, I'm glad that this confirms that it was at some point Pabodi.
One of us always tells the truth and one of us always lies. My name is Pabodi
What's your
and
name?
his name is Padobi.
Damn it! Which of you wrote me the letter?
It was...
I did! He did! Damn it!
Oh, no. The snow aggressively hits the windows. Sherman, the pilot, hi Sherman, can barely see a few inches ahead of the nose of the large airplane, which is shaken by the wind. You're all frightened. Just as it seems you are lost, something appears in the fog. These are the impressive jet-black summits of the unknown mountains that rise above the clouds as if oblivious to the strength of the storm. Are they stupid? Are these mountains stupid? Oblivious, stupid mountains? They're still far away, but it seems to dominate the fog as if it could repel it. Suddenly, the shape of these mountains catches your eye. As a geologist, you've never seen anything like it. What a big rock! Stories from forbidden books and their descriptions of old and abhorrent places come to mind, like the Plateau of Lang mentioned in the assist.
Narcotic?
Narcotic?
It's
Manuscripts?
Pnakotic.
Yeah, I think narcotic sounds right. Manuscripts and the infamous assist.
I'm not reading this. No, I've learned you're not supposed to read this.
The Necromomicon. Sherman asks you what to do next. You can try landing and search for the camp on foot on page 6, or approach the mountains and fly over their summits on page 64.
I have literally no lean.
I don't either because they both seem bad. But that's an Eldritch horror book for you, isn't it?
Well, I will say, if we are using any like logic from previous pages, one of the notes that we got from the expedition that left from Professor Lake was that in weather this bad, they would not dare trying to fly over the summits, fly over the peaks, I believe is what they said. I wonder if that is a hint that possibly we should avoid the same.
That would be, I'm going to give the book the BOTD, that good old benefit of the doubt, and see if that would be the case. Because I would like it if that was the case. The book can only serve to disappoint. Nope, okay, we're good. Still startled after the huge electric storm that surrounds the Mountains of Madness, your group manages to land about 300 feet from Lake's base camp. As soon as you disembark the plane, you comprehend the terrible sufferings undergone by the men of the expedition. Lake has established his base in the middle of a barely sheltered plateau, and the wind coming from the slopes meets it with extreme violence. Luckily, the weather has calmed down now, but it's easy to imagine what the explorers would have gone through in the midst of a storm. The dogs won't leave the plane as if something terrifies them. So before unloading the equipment and taking control of the facilities, you resolve to conduct a thorough investigation about what's happened in Lake's camp. What you see fills you with horror. The prefabricated shelters are half destroyed. There are machines and sledges and ruins everywhere. On page 22... Oh, what the hell? On page 22, you'll find a map with every place you can visit and a list of names. Once you finish your investigations, you'll be able to resume your search. Once you've finished your investigation, you'll be able to okay. You can investigate the camp following the instructions on page 22. You can return to the map and explore other places whenever you want. Ooh.
That's super cool. I did not think that in a book of this length we would get something like this going on.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a base map of camp. It's got 4 different locations. The dog corrals, so the dog kennel area. We've got the main camp, which is as large as, as it looks like it's large enough to in-house all of the people. We have the common grave, and then we have the hangar. And finally, marked additionally as post-text, so not printed on the map, but added afterwards, the odd structure, and it's just an X on the map.
Huh. Additionally, this is something that maybe will come into play later. I do find it interesting that there's a list of names and they all have numbers by them that absolutely could be pages in the book.
I very quickly went to go check that just in case that was the case. And 26 is a page we've already been to. That was flying. It was
Gotcha.
a page of flying. So that isn't related necessarily.
Well, then
but we do
screw
have the
me,
full list
Raps.
of...
Make me look like an idiot. Why don't
Well,
you?
only because I made myself look like that idiot a couple of seconds before, and I was like, before I say this, I'm gonna quickly check in case.
I'm not gonna sound like an idiot on live pre-recorded podcast. Wow.
I'm just so worried about sounding like one that I made you sound like one instead.
Wow.
This is bullying, right? That's how bullying happens.
Yeah.
I don't want you to call me these things, so I'm gonna say you're them. So we've got the full list of people who've been here. So we've got Percy Lake all the way through Howard, who is the first name of Gedney, Augustus Carroll. 11 names on the list, not necessarily relevant, but we've got 6 options, one for each of our locations, and then finally, if you think you've already resolved the mystery, go to this page. So which location should we expect first?
Should we just start at the top?
Let's do it. Let's go to the dog corals.
Odd structures.
I imagine we will constantly be able to come back to this page until...
I don't know if I want to read this page. You
You
know what? I'm gonna take a.
Oh God!
I'm gonna take a little bit of I'm gonna take a little bit of a liberty here.
If you'd like, I can do it.
No, I'll do it. I'll do it. It's hey, it's a horror book.
So the appropriate, we'd be horrified.
It's completely impossible to take your dogs to the spot where Lake's expedition was, and when you arrive at the dog corals, you know why. The animals had been locked in a rectangular building made with blocks of ice and strengthened with the structure of a camping tent. But now it's wrecked. You get in through an enormous hole in the wall that seems to have been made from the inside. Everything is completely fine in here, and the dogs are great. Everything is good. There is a dead man, though, because that doesn't bother me. And
the dead man's neck is being twisted in a horrifying manner.
Yes, that's and the man is in such a horrible state that he cannot be identified. In the end, you decide to keep your dog safe inside the plane for your own safety. There isn't much you can do here. Return now and choose a new destination at page 22. I'm glad the dogs are fine.
Discerning listeners will be able to tell what the setting was otherwise.
Yeah.
But just in case it ends up being relevant to the puzzle, I hope it isn't. The frightening fact is that there is a corpse of a man who is in such terrible shape that you cannot identify him now. So there's just an unidentifiable man in here. Excellent.
Yes.
Let's head back to the pages and go to the camp on 94.
Yeehaw howdy. Lake's main camp is in sound condition, apparently. As soon as you near it, you cry Lake's name as well as his pilots, but no one comes out to welcome you. There are 4 tents in camp, forming a semicircle along with a smaller one in the middle and another far from the rest. Out of the 4 big ones, reinforced by heavy walls of ice, 2 are the enormous tents, where the men sleep during the rest hours. The 3rd one is where the findings of the expedition and the heavy machinery are kept. And the last one serves as a dining hall and a leisure area. 5th one, which is much smaller and more sheltered, houses the wireless and vital equipment, while the most remote tent serves as a makeshift latrine. Relieving yourself in the cold could be deadly. Examine the camp. Oh my God, choices on choices.
Yeah.
Examine the camp beds on 43. Examine the tent with the wireless outfits on 25, the leisure area on the 17. Check the toilets on 28, or the storage area on 26.
I mean, it almost feels appropriate to go through all of these as well, assuming that's possible.
I think let's try and think as far as like if we are in a situation where we can't, though, if we get locked into one, what is there one? I feel like so the 3rd one is where the findings of the expedition and the heavy machinery are kept. Which one's the 3rd one?
The 3rd, I believe, is the storage. Does that count as storage?
I don't know.
There's 2 tents where people sleep. The 3rd is the findings of the expedition and the heavy machinery where they're kept. Last is dining hall and leisure. And then there's the latrines. So yeah, the only non-mentioned one there is the storage area.
Well, it's just the fifth one, which is smaller and more sheltered, houses the wireless and vital equipment. So that's probably the wireless outfit. So yeah, Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go to 26 then. First, maybe?
Sure.
Just in case we can only do one. The storage area has been partially dismantled, and some of the parts of the structure of the tent have been used to either reinforce or enlarge the constructions. There's little to see here except for a large number of missing pieces of Paboti, second apparatus, particularly the motor and the bits. You also notice some tracks left by 3 sledges that lead from the tent to the mountain range of Madness. However, you don't see the dog tracks, which unsettles you. Continue the investigation in camp on page 94 or return to the map on 22. So, okay. So it's either go back and choose from that stuff or go back to the map.
Mm-hmm. Paboti's second apparatus, particularly the motors and bits. Why would they want to take away the drilling if their intent is to get into the mountain? Used to reinforce or enlarge the construction. I'm not entirely certain. Let's see what else we learn on maybe the leisure area. I feel like that would be an appropriate way to try and like learn what has happened. Like that's a very anthropocentric area. Like people engage here.
Yeah, I hope they have an arcade machine. The leisure area is located under a tent almost as big as the ones with the camp beds. Lake has set up a wooden table around which there are 4 chairs. The room seems to be empty, but someone served dinner for 2 that has now gone freezing, with no one there to finish it. The tent heater has gone missing, and there are drag marks from the place where it was once held to the machinery area. There's a piece of paper nailed to the wall that is a list of the assigned tasks. January 20 to 27th, Atwood Wireless Reports, 10, 16, 22, 30. T. Daniels and Brennan, dog corals every other day. I feel like that might be relevant. Because we know there's the one person in there, but they're not identifiable.
Exactly.
Every other day. Unfortunately, that doesn't narrow it down fully because we don't know who started.
We might be able to learn that in the camp.
Fowler Outpost, Boudreaux, Gedney, and Lake, study of samples. Carroll and Watkins, equipment and custody. Doesn't seem to clear up much for you, and you resume your investigation. Before we go again,
where do you think we should head? Camp, beds, wireless outfits, or the latrines?
Let's go to the turlet.
Turlet.
It's such a fun word. The existence of a tent exclusively for the latrines is essential in the Antarctic. Exposing any part of your body to these gelid...
Gelid mention! Woo! Gelid fans in chat?
Gelid fans. Gelid temperatures...
Post your poll gelids.
Raise your gelids. Actually, hold on. The gelid temperatures may result in immediate freezing with resulting gangrene and amputations. The space for the latrine is small and, as you expected, empty. However, the door is open and the hole used to relieve oneself is exposed to the cold from the outside. There's something that catches your attention. A trail of salt that seems to trace a circle around the putrid hole. If you think it'd be better to retrace your steps and continue exploring the base camp, turn to 94. Continue to look around the other areas on 22. If you want to take a look at the well, someone will have to put their hand in on page 102. Let's go.
Let's do it.
For some reason, none of your companions seem inclined to stick their hand in the hole of the latrines. And they even advise you to not do it. Buzzkill? However, there's something odd about those trails of salt. You enter the cubicle, and the odor of rotten fish almost makes you vom. You bring your face closer to the white trail that surrounds the hole and realize that it's covered in small marks, as if someone had pressed, striated triangles ending in small dots all over the surface.
Lake's fossils.
You think at once. But who would stamp the marks as if they were tracks unless really were tracks? But that would mean something appalling. Discarding the idea, you resolve to stick your hand, protected by a thick glove, into the to the hole where all the poop go. You fumble in the sticky, semi-frozen, gelid puddle until something hard seems to move when you touch it. Holding whatever it is you found, you pull out and remove it from the excrement, and oh my lord. Holding whatever it is you found, you pull on it until you remove it from the excrement, and a scream escapes from your mouth. Horrified, you fling poor Professor Lake's head away from you.
It's a bad way to go, man.
Yeah, that's not great. You can return to the map on 22, Camp 94, or if you think the events are too dreadful to face on your own, you contact McMurdo Sound on page 80. That's a new option.
It is. Should we check out our you leave and that's the end of the adventure path, which I imagine that is.
On 80, I mean, sure. Let's see. It's probably just going to wrap itself up quickly, so we might as well.
Yeah.
Certainly, something horrible has happened to Lake's team. You think? Something too terrible to have a reasonable explanation. Uh-huh. You gather your men. You're sure there can be no survivors. It's time to speak to McMurdo Sound. So they evacuate you as soon as possible. Many years go by before you can forget the horrors that lived in the Antarctic lands, but at least you returned alive. Who knows what terrible experiences were suffered by those who left to their fate at the slopes of the Mountain of Madness. Maybe with time you'll recover enough to start a new expedition, but for now, this is the end. That probably is a good end.
It is. For this book, absolutely.
But
however,
let's...
there is also a mystery to be solved here.
Yeah.
It seems much clearer what the mystery might be. Not what its solution is, but just the parameters, the borders, the boundary of this mission.
Let's go to the beds. 43.
Yeah.
The two tents where Lake's team slept are silent and completely dark. It's deadly cold inside, and you are certain that something terrible has happened to the expedition. Yeah, me too. With your electric torch, you see that the tent heaters have gone missing.
There is someone here!
Shouts McTie, your pilot, pointing at one of the beds. At the same time, you hear Pabodie shriek from the next door tent, and what you find is blood-curdling. You abandon the area in horror, for in the other camp beds, as if asleep, lie the frozen and bruised corpses of the students. You manage to identify Moulton, Mills, and Orendorff, while Pabodie tells you that in the other tent is the remains of Theodore Daniels, and someone he thinks might be Brennan, but is too crushed to say for sure. So what were the...
Okay. So that confirms that Theodore Daniels is here, and he thinks Brennan's there, but we know that Brennan could also be the unidentifiable corpse in the dog corral.
Okay. So you wrote down the names for... What are the two names for the dog corral?
It was T. Daniels and Brennan. So if we see T. Daniels here, Brennan is presumably the other body, which means we don't know who this body, the crushed one, is.
True. Interesting. Yeah, this is flashbacks to the Sherlock Holmes solo mysteries right now.
Mm-hmm. We've got one final location on 25, the tent with the wireless outfits.
The tent that stores the wireless outfits is in a sound state, but a curious door, like rotten fish, impregnates everything. Yeah. A quick glimpse at the wireless is enough to see that it's been roughly handled. And although it may be easily repaired, it looks like someone or something had been shaking it and hitting it. The microphone's missing, although the lead still hangs from one of its sides. When the wireless operator, McTie, tries sitting on the chair to examine it, he turns towards you with goosebumps. You approach him carefully, and what you see fills you with terror, because stuffed under the table is the crushed corpse of Atwood, his fingers still clenching the microphone. Well, back to page 22. So who's even alive? Wait, not alive, but who's not accounted for?
I don't believe... Actually, hang on. I'm going to very quickly go back to the camp beds area. So Moulton, Mills, Orendorff are all accounted for here. There's also Daniels and possibly Brennan, but not Brennan.
Lake's accounted for.
Lake's obviously accounted for, yeah. So those are the only ones that we have so far. We do have an area where I imagine we might account for a couple more of them. The common grave.
Mm-hmm. If you've already resolved the mystery, I mean, I feel like we'll know when we...
Mm-hmm. The fact that there's like a lot of sledge equipment, like sledging equipment and heavy equipment here, and like a lot of the heavy equipment's been taken away and a lot of like bodies have been like crushed, makes me think that one person has gone mad and done that to a bunch of other people rather than there being like, you know, the evil force here that is doing it itself.
Yeah, I can see it. All right, so the common grave, maybe this is gonna, it's empty. There's nothing here. It's all great. This is where Lake and his men hid the bodies of the creatures recovered from the ice, a total of 6 specimens in perfectly sound condition that they managed to drag out with the aid of the dogs, and 2 others that were too damaged. These would be used for the preliminary autopsies. Seemingly, Lake had commanded that the creatures be buried in ice as far as possible from the dog corrals, and covered with heavy, waterproof tarpaulin. It's always funny to see tarpaulin because I just know it exclusively as tarp, and it feels like when your parents are mad at you and they hit you with the full name.
Tarpaulin!
Tarpaulin!
What have you done?
What are you doing, tarpaulin?
I put you out over the top of my camping area so that I would stay dry, and you've got a hole in you? Tarpaulin.
Aided by 2 men from your team, you undo the tarpaulin, which is partially buried under the snow and ice. There are 5 pits before your feet, forming a pentagram or a star, but they're empty. Someone has poured fuel over the corpses and reduced their bodies to ashes. Clearly, these events and the isolation itself has disturbed Lake's group. Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, there's no explanation for this odd imagery. Looking for the 6th pit, McTighe finds something that fills you with horror. In the shallow tomb lie the naked frozen bodies of Watkins and Carroll. Both men were buried alive. For through the transparent ice, you can clearly see how they attempted to scratch their way to the surface before passing away. Oh boy. Explore on page 22 again. Okay, that's another 2.
They found specimen
Yes.
in perfectly sound condition. The bodies of the creatures recovered from the ice. So we only have Watkins and Carroll here as human bodies.
Seems like it. Unless
Cool.
we're wrong about some of the bodies dug up, and that's a mislead or something. And one of those is actually somebody. Well,
Final location is, it's 2 final locations, rather. We've got the hangar, and then we've got the odd metal structure.
yep. 32 we go. The hangar where the 4 planes of the expedition are housed is a vast tent reinforced with prefabricated materials. As soon as you step inside, you smell the strong odor of gas. And after a quick examination, you realize that someone or something has been manipulating the plane's engines. Many barrels of fuel are missing, and others seem to have been split over the planes, maybe seeking their destruction. More disturbing is that in the cabin of one of the planes, you find the lifeless body of a pilot. Baudreau. Seems he shot himself to put an end to the nightmare lived by the explorers in the camp. However, you find something useful in your search. On one of the tables are the team's flight plans, including the safe routes to cross the mountains toward the outpost. Okay. It's another one. There can't be. Feels like we gotta be through everybody.
It does. I haven't heard Gedney or Flower mentioned.
True.
Orendorff. I think all of the rest of these have been. I want to now be checking them off, but I haven't been doing that.
I know. So that's the thing, is the one crushed body in the beds is either Gedney or Flower, theoretically.
Yeah. Actually, hang on. I realize what's happened here and why they all have numbers beside them. We have to figure out who either did it or is still alive, and then go to the page of that. So I definitely need to be crossing these people
That's
out.
what I was thinking. That's why I mentioned it earlier. So I wasn't stupid.
No, you aren't.
Oh, that's the nicest thing ever.
Someone agreeing with me when I said that. Okay. So Lake is dead. I
Yes.
don't know about Molten.
Oh man, it's all over the place. Moulton, Mills, and Orendorff are dead.
Molten, Mills, and Orendorff.
And T. Daniels. And then I guess Brennan was the one in the dog land.
Mm-hmm. We know Bedreau was also killed.
Yep. Atwood.
Bedreau. We know Daniels and Atwood are dead. We assume Brennan to be dead from the unrecognizable corpse.
It's likely.
We know Lake is dead. I feel like Carroll and Watkins were somewhere as well.
Yeah, I'm looking through a couple things here. They were the ones buried alive.
So it's Gedney, Flower, and Brennan. Yeah, the 3.
But Brennan's presumed the one in the dog land.
Brennan's definitely presumed to be the one in the Doglands, but I've marked it down as not absolutely certain, just in case. Gedney and Flower. So Gedney. Oh, it's possible his name is Fowler, as I'm seeing on this other side. Fowler appears to have been sent to the outpost, and Gedney did not have a role. They didn't give Gedney a job. Oh, hang on. No, they did. Study of samples. My apologies.
All right.
Bedreau killed himself. Lake, his head is in the poop hole.
He probably did that to himself too.
Maybe. But Gedney was with them.
I mean, I don't think that you can decapitate yourself and throw your head in the toilet.
Really? Not even if you try? Not even if you believe?
You know what? If you really put your head to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Time
106.
for a metal structure.
Let's go for a big metal structure. The metallic structure soon catches the eye of your team. It's a building made of various prefabricated tents, which have been joined together and reinforced by ice. As you get closer, you see how a wall of ice blocks that had once been raised is now blood-stained and in ruins. Stepping inside, you realize this is the place where Lake and his team performed the autopsies of the creatures. Now the place is wrecked, as if a terrible fight had taken place. The remains of 2 of the rescued specimens are decomposing and stinking of rotten eggs, twisting your stomachs. In the center of the room, there's a stretcher where a tarpaulin is covering something.
Jeremy Olin!
You can examine what's lying under the tarpaulin on page 11. I mean, let's do it. Let's get all the rest of the info.
Gotta.
Accompanied by McTighe and Pabodie, you walk to the autopsy table with a racing heart. You undo the tarpaulin and see something that fills you with horror. Oh, really? It's been all so great. Before you, there's a carefully dissected body of a man lacking a head. I wonder. His organs have been carefully, but not professionally removed. It seems the procedure was performed by a butcher rather than a doctor. By his feet is the headless carcass of something irrelevant. Don't worry about it. To which someone has... Jesus Christ. To which someone has sewn Fowler's head on in a grotesque manner. You wretch. Covering the horrifying sight, you examine the rest of the tent, searching for any hint of what could have happened. What catches your attention the most is that the tent heater is smashed. I know there's a lot going on in this room, but does anyone notice that heater is smashed? As if someone had attacked the machine with a hammer or a rock. In addition, there's a large number of burned matches and a gigantic block of half-melted ice. Oh boy. You can alert McMurdo on page 80 again, but it's the same page. All right. Well, hey, on to page 35, I suppose, where we...
Exactly, if you think you've already resolved the mystery.
I mean, I don't...
Oh.
What?
I believe I'm relatively close.
Well, I was about to say, the phrasing on it has me going, well, what... Solve the mystery or deduced which person it is, which person is still theoretically maybe alive. That I think we probably are there, right? Like
I'm working backwards effectively from that.
Yeah.
Which is
so that's what it's asking, then yeah, we could probably figure it out.
We agree that Brennan is probably the body in the dog corral by
Likely.
itself with nothing else in there. And that Gedney was working with Fowler and was working with Boudreaux and Lake on the samples. So I imagine that as they were inspecting these samples, Boudreaux obviously was driven mad enough, but sane enough to be like, I'm not going any further than this. And Lake is obviously a victim in this instance, having not been capable of doing that to himself. It makes the most sense for Gedney, not only as our surviving person, but also the person who has interacted with the most occult material to be the person who wants to change this. Also, we know that the plans showed that they were planning on safely making it to the other base camp by flying over the mountains. I wonder if it's possible that Gedney's, as Gedney has become increasingly corrupt, he is effectively trying to stop the ingress of humanity into this area and ward them off, and that his sabotage, frankly, of each element of the camp is to do so. That's as far as I get.
I'm with you. Let's go to 35. I think that since we've exhausted everything on this path, I think that like I'm only tripped up by the phrasing of the question or of what it says more than like I think it's probably the case. So here we go. After some reconsideration of the proofs obtained during your investigation, there's no doubt that something terrifying and probably otherworldly occurred during the storm. Let's put your deducing skills to the test. Check the list of all the researchers on page 22. The number preceding each name represents their age. One of these researchers is not in camp. They could be the perpetrators of this massacre, or they might have an explanation as to what happened. Head to the section that corresponds with their age to continue your investigation. Don't rush it. In Antarctica, there's plenty of time to think.
Gedney is 50 years old.
50. Clearly. You have not yet located or recovered Gedney's corpse. The poor man must still be keeping guard on the camp. Your concern is that out of the 6 complete specimens recovered from the ice, only 5 of them occupy the strange star-shaped tomb. You swallow and make the hardest decision of your life to resume the search for the missing Gedney and bring him or his corpse back to civilization, if at all possible. It's less than a day-long trip to McMurdo Bay, and you have barely made it to the frontier of the frozen continent. And yet, you find yourselves wholly isolated and disoriented. You don't want to jeopardize the rest of the expedition, so come on, dude. Give it up. You don't love rocks that much,
I'm going
man.
back for the rocks.
You don't want to jeopardize the rest of your expedition, so it'd be more prudent if you depart on your own in search of answers. Obviously, you can't fly a plane by yourself, so you need Danforth's continued aid. At a mere 16 hours after landing on the base, you both board the exploration biplane and head for the mountain range. As you near the black, sinister summits, you observe with puzzlement the strange formations that creep up the sides. They're a tangle of cubes, ramparts, cave mouths. Take a number of photographs, but somehow they remind you of ancestral walls in cities like Machu Picchu, something utterly impossible. If it were true, you'd be staring at a construction that could only have been made by titans. Continue your exploration on page 95. You land without much difficulty 7.5 miles high in a quiet valley surrounded by the mountains on 3 sides. Standing this close to the walls highlights the impossible shapes of these rocks, almost as if they've been sculpted artificially, forming tangles of superimposed cubes reminiscent of the paintings of this disturbed Rorik. It's very strange. Observing these structures with your binoculars, you have the impression that they are not even made of the same material as the rock. Danforth thinks that through the valley you could cross the mountain barrier that seems to reach from the east to the west as far as the eye can see, and try and find the missing Gedney from up there. But it might be safer for you to continue on foot until you reach base camp and trust that someone will still be there. Continue the climb on 93 or return to the aircraft to overfly the mountains on 73.
I suspect that given the fact that there was safe plans for flight paths over the mountains, that perhaps that's a hint that we should do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely down to try 73. Heeding reason, you decide to return to the camp in search of a means to explore whatever there is beyond the mountains. Avoiding putting the rest of the team at risk, you and Danforth will fly the smallest of the planes crossing the mountains in search of the outpost. The next morning, the light aircraft crosses the last stretch of the thick fog shaken by the wind, but owing to Lake's flight plans, nothing worse than an intense dizziness occurs. What you see through the windows escapes all reason. Danforth is so surprised that he almost loses control of the craft. You rush to take as many pictures as possible as the pilot circles the plateau below you, trying to avoid getting too close to the lost world that unfolds before your eyes. Go to page 86. You're flying over hundreds and hundreds of square miles of buildings, half buried in a niche of ice. The fuel of the 4 craft combined won't be enough to cover the entirety of this prehistoric city. Terrifying images of the legendary megalopolises like Atlantis or Comorian come to mind. But what you explore is older and more sinister. Something linked to pre-human civilizations like Volusia or Raleigh. There are many interesting points, a number of 5-pointed starfish arrangement squares, a conic construction that could rival the Tower of Babel, and many barrel-shaped buildings that are now completely time-worn. After a long while, you cross a deep crack that divides the city in 2 parts. Beyond this crack, the buildings become more primitive, in ruins that have been dispersed over time. Eventually, you find a spot for landing, a platform of ice that appears to have been made precisely for that purpose. Get ready to explore on 69.
I assumed we wouldn't land. I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, Danforth is an excellent pilot, and he lands smoothly on the narrow icy walkway where you choose to start the exploration. Now you must carefully choose what equipment you'll carry along with the electric torches and fur suits. You can take up to 2 objects each. Studying the contents of the cargo area, you see things that might be quite useful. Notebooks, pencils, camera with flash, provisions for 2 days, hammers and chisels, 65 feet of ropes, compass, and a map of the Antarctic, mirrors and flare guns, and 35 ounces of confetti in a bag, portable camping tent, and tent heater and matches.
Now, they did say might be useful. If I'm about to have a wedding, for instance, 35 ounces of confetti in a bag is perfect.
Yeah? Oh boy. 2 objects each.
Yes. So for us and Danforth, I mean, I'm focused. I imagine like survival is the primary focus here. Like rope. Rope.
Yeah,
Why don't we each pick two?
sure.
What do you think?
Rope.
Dang it. That'll give me my first one.
All right then. Fine. If we're agreeing on rope and you're taking ownership of it, then 35 out. Then, ooh. You know what? Portable camping tent and tent heater and matches are two different items, but I'm gonna make them both of my choices.
Okay. I'm gonna say mirrors and flare guns because it's one line, but it's two
Mhm.
things. That's value.
Because we've seen, or rather we've heard, that instruments of measurement and direction just go wild in these areas. Not only because we're, close to the South Pole, but also because of the whole eldritch nature of it all. So I don't imagine that, cameras might be a little bit useful. I don't imagine notebook and pencil would be especially useful. Compass and map of the Antarctic might as well read a swift handshake and good luck. Like, it's nothing.
Yeah. All right. 66. You walk with some difficulty on the floor of the glacier that has swallowed the city, shaken by the wind that carries snowflakes that were once rain. Many buildings rise at different distances, most of which have been buried in the snow, with just their tops rising above it, which makes it impossible to get inside. However, there are two possible destinations that could lead to the inside of the blurry city that is drawn below your feet. The first is a stone cone, about 150 feet tall, and the other is a riverbed, which looks like a large cut that divides the city in two, and through which one could make it inside. You're not completely sure, but you think you saw something twinkle inside. Maybe it was a reflection of the snow or something metallic that's been abandoned. The cone is relatively near, while the canal will take a few hours to reach, crossing the plateau. If you want to explore the building, go to page 14. If you believe crossing the frozen plateau might be safer, in order to not lose the reference of the sky, go to page 70.
What do you think?
Could we pause?
For sure. And we're back. It's been a cut between days because it seems like there is going to be another large, broad, open area here under the ice. And we have to decide how we want to explore it, whether or not we're going into the building with our equipment we picked last episode, the rope, the portable tent, the tent with heat matches. Oh, the tent heat matches, right, okay. And the mirror and flare gun.
Yes.
Rita, should we go into the building, this auspicious building, or should we cross the frozen plateau itself so that we don't lose the reference of the sky above?
I like to be inside. Just in general, and also probably in this book. So let's go ahead.
The only reason I wouldn't go there is if we were playing Grail Quest and turning to page 14 would be a bad idea, but here
that is true.
Could be a good one.
All right. As you get near, you see that what you mistook for a tower was actually a sort of defense bastion in the shape of a 5-pointed star, whose edges are blunt owing to erosion. It's made of a sort of black granite that extends both to the sky and to the center of the earth. On each side of the stars, there are a number of open windows. They're big enough to sneak through, and so you do. You get to a room paved with black slate that leads to several spiral ramps descending to the interior of the ice.
I think we'd better go down,
says Danforth in resignation, as he turns on his electric torch.
After all, that's why we're here for.
The descent is dangerous and fascinating. The stone walls seem to be divided by a marble belt of a lighter color in which a number of symbols have been carved. Dots, triangles, and stars that could, without a doubt, form a sort of writing system. Down the end of a ramp, there's a great 5-sided room. Explore it on 103. The floor is still paved with slate, but the tiles are now much bigger than you've seen so far. You arrive at a 5-sided gallery that has 4 exit doors. The one to the west undoubtedly leads to the ramps that take you out of the city. While the northern and southern ones run parallel to the mountain barrier, the most promising one is to the east, which seems to dip into the insides of the city. There don't seem to be any pictograms in this room, and the most interesting... There's no pictures here.
And there's no pictures in this room. You can't read it.
I can't read this room.
This isn't a pop-up room.
Oh my god, that's such a good burn for somebody. Like, if you want to insult their intelligence and... Wow, that's funny. Their intelligence and their, ability to read the room, just say, sorry, I understand there's no pictures in here. That's just... so you can't read the room. Like, I can't... That's so... Oh my god. That would end somebody.
It has the perfect thing where it gets them off guard. They're initially confused, like, wait, what? And then they interpret it, and then it's got a double hit.
Yeah. It's a 1-2 punch burn. There's no pictograms in here, so you can't read the room. And the most interesting thing is that it seems to have been vacated in a rush, for there are markings on the floor as if things have been dragged. These, however, are of no help because they point everywhere. What do? You can head southward following the mountain range on 90, continue northward parallel to the mountainside on 40. Perhaps you want to head west and leave the city, terminating your investigation until you're more prepared. Oh, on 16.
More prepared?
What? Or you can walk along the eastern corridor to the deepest areas of the nameless city on 79. Dang. That is options on options.
That is a lot of options and more. How are we going to be more prepared than this?
It like the phrasing on that almost like it's one of those things where it's like I would not have considered that we would need to be more prepared because we got 6 items.
Uh-huh.
But now that it's been posited to me that there is an ability to be more prepared, I'm kind of interested.
On a very similar level of I didn't think the game would let us get more prepared than this, but since it's offering.
Yeah, because that's the thing. But they pair it with the thing that I would normally want to do the least, which is like the implication being stop investigating. But I think let's go to 16 and see what it brings to the table, because maybe something else happens.
Maybe it does.
Hey, maybe. Both you and Danforth are terrified by the implications of the existence of a city like this one, doubtlessly of no human origin. Carrying samples as proof of what you went through, you crawl out through one of the ramps. The first to come to the top is Danforth, and you wait for him to help you leave the hole, but his help never comes. Disgusted, you manage to reach the edge and find yourself face to face with someone familiar who looks at you wide-eyed.
Tekalili!
Screams a distorted Gedney. Beside him, upside down, there's Danforth hanging from a sort of black and greasy tentacle. The tentacle belongs to one of the creatures Lake found. A monster shaped like a hogshead with a starfish-shaped head. Yelling in panic. Is it now? Yelling in panic. You fall down to the interior of the city, and your electric torch is smashed to pieces. You spend the next days running around in absolute darkness. You may survive deadly falls, predators that creep through corridors, hunger and cold, but sooner or later, one of the old ones or their servants, the horrendous Shoggoths, will find you, and you'll also chant their demented litany.
Tekalili!
The end? Question mark?
I mean, it's not necessarily the end of our character, but maybe their story.
Yeah. All right, so back to the room on 103.
Makes sense to me. West is bad. East is apparently promising, but then there's also just north and south, which it is strange of them to go, this is a bad option, this is a good option, and then there's 2 others. They're so nondescript.
It's so true that I almost want to go Grail Quest and say north and then east.
Yeah. I love it. Meet 140.
When in doubt, go north first and then go east second. You move forward along dark corridors that have been pierced by peculiar barrel-shaped niches. You explore empty rooms that appear to have been evacuated in a rush. You peer out the windows that seem to lead to unfathomable abysses underneath the ice. The exploration seems to be endless, and despite how wonderful and strange these buildings might be, you start to feel tired. Hours go by before you realize that if you continue down here, you won't ever return to the surface. If you carry something like a piece of paper and a pencil or confetti to mark your path, you can use them to return to the starting point on 103. If you do not own anything to mark your path, keep walking blindly to 67.
Well, mirrors, flare gun, tent heater, and matches.
We should have taken the confetti. I will say, I did briefly, I was like, okay, well, what could you use the confetti for? I actually did think, for a breadcrumb style trail. Because I was like, what else is the possible use for it? I didn't think that it would actually be a thing.
Nope, you're 100% right. That would be the best item on that list for breadcrumb trailing.
What else we got? Just as you thought. You are going in circles, in a directionless labyrinth. You're no longer able to identify which door leads where. You go down ramps, find cul-de-sacs and rooms wrecked by ice or fire. At a certain point, you're sure that a real war broke out in these corridors. When the batteries of the electric torches run out, you know that you are doomed. You can only await death by hunger or cold, or who knows if something worse could happen. A third thing, fourth thing, fifth thing. If you have food rations or flare guns, maybe you could make a desperate attempt to summon help. Otherwise, I'm afraid this is the end. Oh, wait, what? Down on the bottom. If you have any of the aforementioned elements for survival, you can try and await your rescue on page 77.
We do have a flare gun, courtesy of your very self.
It seems something went terribly wrong. It's weird to get the end and then at the bottom of the page there's a chance for something else. That's wild. It seems something went terribly wrong. You wake up disoriented with a very dry mouth due to the medicines. The first days, you can't say a word. You resort to banging your head against the padded walls of the cell you've been locked up in. Hardest of all is the inability to warn someone about the horrors that stalk us out there. For you've been gagged with a leather piece, and with the tight straitjacket, it does not seem that you're able to remove it. What you saw outside has deprived you of your sanity, and you're going to be spending a long, long time locked in this asylum. That's right, at some point you must have gone completely insane. Of course, you are not willing to admit it, for you know full well what happened. And regardless of all the drugs and electric shocks you receive, you'll defend your truth. As a wise man once said,
"The prosaic materialism of the majority condemns as madness the flashes of supersight which penetrate the common veil of obvious empiricism."
The end? The good old the end failure into the end failure combo is wild.
Well, I mean, at least we didn't starve to death, we didn't cold to death, or some worse thing.
Yeah, I think that this is the worst thing, honestly.
Yeah, that is true. We are locked inside the tomb of our own body for the rest of our life.
I get
knowing
claustrophobic
that
when
there are
I'm in a
great
car.
evils out there. Sorry?
Yeah. I get claustrophobic in a car. Like, I just... and I can get out.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Imagine that, but it's strapped to one's body.
Ooh, wait, like Axel from Twisted Metal? Kind of interested now.
Exactly like Axel from Twisted Metal.
He's got tires for hands.
Somewhere between
dude.
that and Gundam.
Yeah. Is Axel a Gundam? In this
I'm looking for a 2-hour YouTube video essay
Yeah,
confirming
that's
or
what I was
denying
about
that.
to
Thank
say.
you.
In this 10-hour essay, I will definitively prove why Axel from Twisted Metal is in fact a Gundam. Yeah, that's.
And
what
then
it is.
halfway through, there's the H Bomber Guy twist where you reveal, actually, you're arguing the opposite.
Yeah. I know. I'm arguing the opposite. I know everybody who has been saying has been viciously fighting for the opposite. Very publicly and vocally. Everyone cares about the opposite
You
side
Axel deniers.
of this argument. Yes. Okay, back to 103. I'd say, right? Back to 103. Kind of get a
Exactly.
A little
We've
bit of
gone
a feel.
north, we've gone west. Shall we head east to the deepest areas of the nameless city?
That sounds good to me. It's a good old page 79. You are traversing a corridor that seems to stretch out endlessly to the interior of the city, and soon you realize it's actually a sort of underground avenue that hangs over a pit of inexpressible depth. The walls to either side of this corridor are less than 3 feet tall, and it's been torn down on some parts. Northwards, you can see thousands of buildings in all imaginable shapes. Some even seem abandoned since prehistoric times. Others look much younger, although still careless in design. Southwards, the path ends in a tower, a stone cone. Ooh. Sorry, I have to repeat the sentence for no reason. A stone cone of inscrutable proportions. That is a fun sentence.
Great one.
The glyphs on the walls are soon replaced by simpler pictograms so you can read the room. Actually, you are contemplating the history of the race that inhabited these cities. It deals with barrel-shaped creatures known as the Old Ones and their servants, the Shoggoths, and how this race was losing power as the world ruled by the great Old Ones was changing. The race decided to split up. Some migrated to the depths of the sea, as others remained to defend their ever-decaying empire on the surface. The worst happened when their servants, genetically engineered creatures, freed them from their masters, invading their cities. The story finishes when the suspension bridge under the ice meets the conic tower. You can explore the tower on page 9 or go back to the one-sided room on page 103.
Ooh. There is interest in the fact that it gives us the ability now to return to the five-sided room.
That is true. What bit of information would we use from here elsewhere to have a different outcome?
It would have to exist in the southern branch.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
what
also
do you
fine
think?
to just continue exploring the tower.
I'm going to let you have it.
Its worth. I want to return to the five-sided room and look at the south.
All right.
That would take us to 90.
To Nante. The corridor stretches straight ahead. The floor of black polished granite turns to huge blocks of black slate that lead to a gigantic room where there are 4 more corridors. Hold on. Let me hit that note again. 4 more corridors. Ooh. Let's go. The room does not surprise you. Oh, let's go. I think that was a high score. 4 more corridors. High score from 4 more corridors.
It doubles every time, so.
Absolutely. It's like it's like star power in Guitar Hero. The room does not surprise you. It's shaped like a star, something that's become familiar to you. Many corridors are completely choked with rocks as if they had collapsed. But it's the curious thing that while some are impassable, others next to them are in perfectly sound condition. In this room, there are niches on each side of the star. They are barrel-shaped and big enough to house 2 people. On the floor are some curious pittings that are also, get this, shaped like stars. You want to go?
No, never mind. That's familiar to me.
Will you go to the north bordering the mountains on 103? Isn't that?
Yeah, that's... Well, I mean, we went south to get here, so...
That makes sense. Or will you worm your way into the underground world that opens up on 34? Or maybe you want to get to the heart of the mountain range, if you haven't already, through these corridors on 83. We haven't, have we?
Through the eastern corridors on it. Yeah, no. That's not the previous direction we took for east.
Yeah, so 34 and 83 are different options. Okay.
I mean, and one of them... Oh, no, it opens its way to the west on this. No, and then 83 on the east. One of them's east. I'm just saying.
I mean, does make it
Go
easy.
east.
Let's go east. You find yourselves in a perfectly circular cave whose western wall leads to a tunnel, and the eastern to an impossibly slippery ramp. Before you reach the egress, you witness an odd occurrence. From 2 puddles on the floor, a vaporous cloud emerges, and submerged in frozen water, you see 2 tablets with odd pictograms of cones and dots marked on them. Nearing the puddle, you see something written on the ice in German.
Knowledge or wisdom, sanity or illumination, how to choose between the forbidden fruit of knowing your creator.
Examining the tablets closely, you see the first is engraved on a surface of gold and the other is on a surface of what looks like obsidian. Take the golden tablet on page 60 or the black one on 21, or just say nah and go to 90. Okay.
So there's 2 puddles on the floor. A vaporous cloud emerges. And submerged in frozen water, you can see 2 tablets with odd pictograms or cones marked on them. Nearing the puddle, you see something written on the ice. Okay, so it's a centralized message, and then there's 2 different tablets that we could pick up that we don't understand the engravings of.
It's true. But in the ice in German, it says knowledge or wisdom, sanity or illumination. I feel like that's tied to the tablets in a way, right? Like, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a decision between them.
So knowledge or wisdom, sanity or illumination.
I mean, the golden one seems... This is just literally off of association. The golden one seems lighter and more illuminated.
True.
So it seems as though it would be in contrast to the sanity option, which may be obsidian then.
True. That's I was kind of leaning towards obsidian anyway.
All right, let's opt for the black one on 21.
It's, for better or worse, I do associate obsidian with eldritch horror more.
Same.
Is that a reason to pick it? Probably not. Like, perhaps I'm starting to think that there's some eldritch horror in this book.
What?
because there's obsidian slates. That's what really tipped it for me.
Right. None of the text about the old ones, the great old ones, their
The what
servants,
now?
the Shoggoths, nothing about it. Okay, yeah.
Oh,
They're
I thought
fully
that
on
was
board.
just like their grandparents. Oh, okay.
No. Volcanic
Grandpappy
glass in the area,
Shoggoth.
you're right.
Yeah. Just whatever. All right, fine. Yeah, maybe it's fine.
My granddad's name was Wenceslas. Granddads have weird names, okay? Some of them might be Shoggoth.
All right, 21. When trying to recover the tablet from the steaming water, not a good start. You realize that it's actually submerged in a transparent block of ice that gives the impression that it's floating in the air. Transparent block of ice that gives the impression that it's floating in the air. As your fingertips touch the surface, you feel extreme pain. You try and remove your hand, but it's stuck to the ice, and pulling back will only skin you. The tablet starts creeping on its own accord, as if alive, towards the palm of your hand. Danforth walks away, scared, and you howl in pain when touching the tablet. Horrible images form in your mind. You writhe and convulse until your jaw drops and your gaze is lost in an infinity. The last thing you hear is a noise like smashing glass. Danforth steps back, frightened at seeing how your body starts cracking from the outside in. He might be oblivious to it, but your mind, now without its meat wrapping, belongs to the data bank of the great race of Yith. The end? Question mark? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that one feels pretty conclusive.
I don't think we need to put a question mark on that one. I think we can put an exclamation point on that one.
Yeah. We're now just a hard drive for the
The
Yith.
end.
Yith, sorry.
All right, let's,
Well,
for the sake of completion, let's take a look at
maybe
the
the
other.
golden one's good.
Yeah, let's take a look at the other one and see what happens. When you take the golden tablet, you notice that the water where it was submerged is warm and gentle to the touch. You extract the artifact without difficulty, but it turns into a liquid that rapidly spills. Oh, you spilled it! The steam it generates causes dizziness, but it's brief. Danforth looks at you with concern, and you shrug. What do you do next? Okay, take the black tablet on 21? I think so, right? Or leave through the corridor. Well, the odds are in your favor on page 90.
Well, let's head to 90.
Back to 90. All right, so that brings us back to the choice of the Bordering Mountains, Underground World opening to the west. So 34 is, the only one we have not done here. Or we could dip all the way back, go to page 9, basically, by going back up and then to the east or whatever the hell. We had one left that we
Yes, I
partially.
think it was east in the original room, the 103. But let's exhaust this path while we're on it and go to 34.
Yeah, just for keeping things straight. The path starts to descend at an alarming rate, while the darkness becomes more and more intense. You aim your electric torch at the walls covered in odd dotted carvings, stars, and triangles. From time to time you can see doors, but they're all under lock and key, secured from the other side. At last, the corridor disgorges into an enormous circular gallery made of stone. Why Cthulhu out here locking doors from the outside? Why he doing that? Why and how?
Through a servant, a Shoggoth.
Sure. I just picture him big Cthulhu walking around with a little
10 p.m. every night, locking up.
yeah, with a big like janitor style key ring going.
Mhm.
Oh shoot, not this one.
Not this one. Not this one.
he's got a big key ring in each one of the little tentacles hanging from his face, and he keeps swapping
just
them
like,
around to try new ones.
Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I wish I was him. Sorry, something else. That was that. No, not that. Where was I? The corridor disgorges into an enormous circular gallery made of stone. It has no floor, just one corridor that surrounds it, and a narrow ramp that spirals down into the darkness. On the vaulted ceiling, someone or something, of course, has engraved what undoubtedly are constellations and star charts. If you have any means of recording these findings, this is clearly the time to use your cameras, tracing paper, or any other means. Otherwise, it might be better for you to continue exploring the city. You can follow the corridors to the west and forget about what's hidden in the abyss on page 90. Just forget about it. You'd like to walk down the pit following the engraved constellations on page 8. Do we have anything to...
We do not, unfortunately. Like a very, very constructive usage of the tent and matches could give us the ability to do some markings, but
It's mixed media. Come on.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. If on the other hand, you'd like to walk down the pit following the engraved constellations, go to page 8. You can go deeper into the bowels of the citadel, circling the pit on 45, page we have not gone.
Walk down to the pit following the engraved constellation.
That seems to be like the way that they bring us towards, keeping track of them, like by recording them.
Mm-hmm.
Without the way to record them, maybe it's just an L. I don't know.
Let's give it a go.
Yeah, let's give it a little look-see. You keep climbing down and down. Everything is so gloomy that you have to use your electric torches to see one another.
Maybe we should turn off one of the torches to save on batteries. If we are here without a light, we'll die.
Paradoxically, the lower you get, the more recent, and also more decadent the structures seem to be, as if the civilization that built them expanded towards the center of the earth instead of the surface. The walls are still covered in carvings in the shape of triangles and stars. Eventually, you'll reach what seems to be the end of a spiral, a sort of labyrinth of rooms, corridors, domes, and niches open before you. Somehow, you identify it as an educational center due to the abundance of engravings, maps, and constellations that cover it all. It's quite a reach, but I picture little baby old ones, young ones.
Because there's a lot
Playing
of
around
information in this room. You determine that this room is
A school.
a kindergarten.
Yeah.
Someone screams, Houston, Houston. I'm getting coordinates from V1.
Now, this is interesting. If you've encountered a golden tablet, turn to 63. Otherwise, keep exploring on 15. We have.
I knew some of the turning back had to be important. Let's go.
But it melted. It melted in our hands, though. We spilled it.
We spelled it. No use crying.
Your eyes open widely when you suddenly see crystal clear all that's happened or has ever happened. Your fingers trace the glyphs of points and stars, and you understand perfectly well how to read them. You start to communicate in a language that no human ear has ever heard. You point to the constellation Taurus, where the unnameable lies. You recite the missing heathen verses of the Necronomicon, and you identify the long-forgotten prayers with which the great race worshipped the indescribable dragon squid-like great old ones. But none of that is enough. Your thirst for knowledge drowns you like a wave. Without saying a word, you turn around to a horrified Danforth, who looks at you with no understanding of what's happening. You tell him, as you lunge at his neck with the intention of spilling his blood. Haven't we spilled enough today? The pilot jerks, terrified. He repeatedly hits you with his electric torch. Wake up on page 77.
This
We have
page is
been.
familiar.
Yes, this is, as a wise man once said, that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The materialism, obvious empiricism, the end.
Naturally.
So instead of rewriting history with touching the golden tablet, I think we probably back up first before going that route.
To the deeper bowels
Yeah.
into the citadel.
Let's go to
45.
the bowels on 45.
Excellent.
You walk carefully so not as to fall into the deep abyss, from which only a narrow footbridge separates you. Doesn't even have the basic protection of a handrail. Oh, this is not up to code. Finally. Cthulhu.
It'd need a tentacle rail, surely.
I'm going to call Osha, but it's, there's an apostrophe in there. Finally, on the west end of the circular building, there's a corridor, which is clearly inclined in an angle of descent that leads to the interior of the nameless city. Danforth is not too pleased with your decision to continue the exploration and seems anxious to come back to the surface.
You promise me that as soon as we find an exit, we'll leave this cursed place.
He begs you. You try to calm him down as you advance along a corridor that turns out to be a hanging bridge that connects two towers of titanic dimensions. At least this one does have a 5-foot-tall handrail. Oh, what you don't see is that it hangs in midair. Walking faster and faster, you make it to the second tower, which is actually more similar to the cone of an artificial mountain. It's so big that it contains a second, smaller citadel. Explore the new structure on page 9. Oh my god. Wait.
Citadel 2, let's go.
You're apparently walking through an isolated suburb in the middle of a city. The buildings are in a terrible state, worse than any you've seen so far. You walk through streets and buildings trying to find the best path. Over your heads you see a thick glacier layer, Over the center of the gigantic tower that contains the citadel, a smaller path leads outside through the layer of ice. You have to turn around and make around and around to make it to that structure. The life of the batteries or electric torches is starting to die down, but luckily enough light is filtering through this ice. The structure is actually a spiral that sinks down into the ground to the dry bed of an underground river. It then returns to the surface. From the bottom of the hole comes a horrific sound, a high-pitched and repetitive whine that makes your hair stand on end. The awful discord is inexplicably combined with a strong and fishy odor. What will you do? Come up to the surface now, go to page 16, or if you want to walk down to the depths of the city, next to the dry riverbed, go to 49.
I mean, you don't come all this way to bail.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's like if you go to the zoo and then you jump into the lion exhibit, but then you don't even see a lion. It's like, why'd you do that? You already did the stupid thing. At least see a lion.
It's like working for 5 months overtime. So you're working 70 hours a week, absolutely burning the candle at both ends, just trying to accrue enough money so that you can save up a trip to finally go to Iceland. You go to Iceland, you stay in Reykjavik, you're ready to finally experience the Northern Lights. It gets to 8 p.m. and you're like, oh, I'm tired, and you go to bed early.
Yeah, I would do that. You're right, I would do. Wait, I mean, no. That's stupid. Wait, I mean, no, that's stupid. Yeah, I mean, let's go see Stinky Fish Dragon.
Stinky Fish Dragon, man. Let's see how he's described indescribably here.
Going down to the riverbed seems madness. But you've explored too much to leave now. When you're closer than ever to the guts of the city, the spiral leads to a beach clear of any waste. One of the sledges is missing from Lake's camp. One of the sledges that is missing from Lake's camp is lying by the shore, and on top of it are the mangled remains of poor old Gedney. And just Gedney. No other animals.
Mm-hmm.
Just Gedney. From the distance, you hear the confusing cacophony of 1,000 penguins. It turns out that this is Cthulhu. Hold on. Turns out the river basin is packed with monstrous albino birds, some of them almost 5 feet tall. These stinking creatures reek of rotten eggs, and their legs seem deformed as if they were tentacles instead. The penguins descend to darkness through a net of corridors that open on one of the embankments of the river basin. So you know how there was one unreleased Give Yourself Goosebumps book at the very end that clearly had some work on it? Just putting it out there, on the cover, a pack of penguins. I think we found the final book of the Give Yourself Goosebumps series.
This is where they've been manifesting.
Yeah, this is
thousands.
Yes, this is the final Give Yourself Goosebumps book. It was secretly in this all along. You can descend into the true heart of the city on page 68.
Oh, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, okay. You turn on your electric torches once again, surrounded by a flock of albino birds. Start your descent through corridors that are wider and better looked after. The temperature rises and the rubble disappears and gives way to a perfectly preserved slate paving in black. You cross rooms decorated with images of the queer creatures discovered by Lake, their barrel-shaped bodies spread out with membranous wings that are easily identifiable. These pictograms tell the history of the splitting of the bloodline into 2 branches, the marine, much bigger, and the terrestrial, which little by little started to deteriorate along with the city, until it was forgotten by its kin and the servants, the fearful Shoggoth. The torches are failing you, and so you decide to turn them off, to make them fail you entirely, while you look for a way to exit these tunnels. If you have with you any means to orient yourselves or mark the ground, like a compass or a confetti. Wait, why does a compass work now, but not trace the path back to page 10, which we have not been to from what I gather on my notes here? Or if you have no means of orientation, 67. Did we grab a compass?
We did not, unfortunately.
Ah, yes, we didn't think that it would work. What do we have?
We have a rope, we have a portable tent, we have a tent heater and matches, and then we also have mirrors and a flare gun.
You know, we did grab a lot of stuff that, implies that we want to stay here.
Yeah!
I am gathering now that there was a lot of, you know what, we'll just stay the night. Not a lot of, let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, right. The flare gun does seem to be pretty much the only thing for survival.
And it did technically work. It just, Not great. So I guess we have to go to 67 unless we want to change history.
Let's check 67, but I think we may have to, as this page looks familiar.
Just as you thought, you're going in circles in a direction this labyrinth. Yes.
The
Yes.
giveaway for me was, at a certain point, you're certain a real war broke out in these corridors, which I love. Just like, a real war?
Okay. So this is an L. So, okay.
Mhm.
God, where do we go?
Our only other options would be, like, the initial going deeper into the, like, 103 leads east and then going deeper from there, or retconning the items that we took so that we have the ability to progress to 10.
Okay, so yeah, because 18 we would have to, if back on 8 we'd have to retcon that we didn't take the tablet technically. 60. Well, we're not going to take the black tablet on page 60. We had something on page 9 back on the surface, right? Or not on the surface, but closer to the surface.
Yes, I believe that was 103 leading east and then choosing to continue exploring the tower. Which actually, no, that takes us to 9, which we just came from. As if you want to go up to the surface or the depths of the city near the dry riverbed.
Yes, so
I believe at this point, without either choosing not to have engaged with the golden tablet or choosing a different item, such as, you know, the method of tracking like a compass, we are deadlocked.
yeah, it seems like it. Otherwise, what's on page? One more thing to check. No, we're out of luck without. Yeah, we're out of luck without picking something else.
Mm-hmm.
That is wild. Okay, all right. So
Perhaps
what do we?
we should drop our portable tent and realize that this portable tent, the entire time, actually turned out to be magnetic. And it turned out that it would spin such
Yes.
to direct the force of the global magnet.
Yes.
The magnet interference. Well, effectively what I'm saying is the bad boy was a compass the entire time. We just didn't realize. We thought that we could have huddled under it for warmth, but actually it turns out it was a directional tool.
Yep, and just pretend we read the entire book again. If you don't like that option, then just listen to if you are upset by us doing that, listen to the whole podcast again until we get to that point.
And then imagine we said compass.
And then imagine we said compass, and then continue, and then you can have that wonderful reality.
But hey, Rito, because we have a compass,
we
can now retrace our path and turn to 10.
The jarring sound you're hearing is now much louder, so much so that it seems to ascend through the corridor you're walking along. Danforth looks at you with fear, and although you can only see his eyes, you're sure that he's trying to tell you something. Cautiously, you turn on your electric torch, whose batteries are almost dead, and light the floor in front of you. Corpses, dozens of corpses, of the strange creatures Lake called the Old Ones, lie slaughtered everywhere. It's as if their flexible bodies had been smashed and torn apart in rage by an unknown force. Maybe penguins fed off the preserved body of those who once ruled them? Penguins take down Cthulhu?
Scary feat.
Danforth's observation makes you realize your mistake. Resume your exploration on page 87. Turning off your torch, your friend's voice is the only thing keeping you sane, despite the harshness of his words.
These headless corpses are too recent, too well preserved to have been from nourishment. These are the specimens Lake has rescued from the ice. Their relatives, too, awoken from their eons-long lethargy and a coldness of the unwoken era, attacked by 4-foot beasts, mangled by white-skinned beings covered in odd clothes and apparatuses. The Old Ones, scientists from another time, did as anyone would have done. They defended themselves. After finding their captors, they crossed the frozen plateaus with samples of new findings and read the inscriptions just like we did. They tried to reunite with their fellow men, their siblings hidden in the deepest and...
Danforth ends his terrifying tale, gasping. A monstrous and oppressive presence seems to materialize out of nowhere. Turn to page 47 to see what happens. Disobeying your own reason, you turn around with your electric torches aimed at the thick fog that seems to advance through the corridors as if alive. Again, you hear the striking musical sound, but this time it's clear the lyrics are to an ancestral prayer.
Tikele Lee, Tikele Lee.
The light from your torches overcome the darkness for a split second, and little by little the fog starts to dissipate. With a terror-induced shiver, you drop your torches and break into a hasty run towards the tunnel that leads to the surface of the dead city, completely deranged. You run towards page 111. You run in the darkness, across demolished alleyways, across the polished floors of the nameless city. Neither the cold nor your hunger can stop the force of the terror that pushes you forward. Not knowing how or when you wake up in the midst of the howls, in one of the Arkham's dark cabins. Poor Danforth beside you is rocking backwards and forwards while chanting the familiar stations on the Boston-Cambridge tunnel. There's no recognition in his eyes, and when you start remembering, you can only envy him. If you ever manage to recover, you will know that you will try with all your might to discourage unwary men from settling out to the frightening mountains of madness. But right now, you can only reenact over and over the last instance of the nightmare you had to live. Looking back, you expected something horrible to be following you, but you would not have foreseen that what was to come from the fog would be so evil and abhorrent. A column of a fetidly plastic black iridescence that gave off a cloud of smoke coming from the abyss. A shapeless mass of bubbles with myriads of eyes forming and unforming like pustules that advanced towards you, stepping over the maniac penguins. Sorry. Something about the penguins takes the tone down a notch in that paragraph.
It's so difficult to take penguins seriously.
It is. They're so silly. The last thing you recall before your frenzied flight was the hearing of the mocking cry of
Tekeleli! Tekeleli!
For the monstrous Shoggoths merely mimicked the voices of their masters. The end? Is this as good of an end as we were going to get, maybe?
I mean, there's only one other ending from that. I think this is as good an ending as we get, by the way, because I think this is like we had like a glimpse of the future kind of effect, right? Because Danforth has not yet engaged with this. He has no recognition. At least that's what I'm assuming, is that like we're having kind of like the final destination moment of like back into our previous body with all of the memory of the future.
Mm-hmm.
This does seem about as good as it might get. If we wanted to see if there was the possible, any other possible good ending here, we would do so by not encountering the golden tablet and heading to 15.
At this point, I'd say in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's just figure it out.
I do half expect this to just be you die.
Yeah. So this is us. Everything was the same about our first pathway through, except we didn't touch either tablet.
Yes.
Dragging your fingers over the glyphs and inscriptions, you try and remember what you learned in your anthropology lessons. Sorry, the dichotomy between this and you understand everything that was and everything that will be. You try and understand, you try and remember what you learned in anthropology class.
For the classes you were awake, what do you remember?
Apparently, you are in a university belonging to a civilization that came from the stars and inhabited this planet before the world cooled down. The position of the constellation allows you to deduce the millenniary age of the beings, the old ones, and their perverse servants, the Shoggoths, those pervs. Through the engravings, you follow the story of how they prospered and evolved, how they coexisted with the first unicellular organisms and manipulated them to make more complex creatures. Studying their tale, you experience the horror of knowing that your primal relatives might have been the children of these beings. Information seems to be divided into two types. One that continues with the history of the Earth, lineal to your days, and another that goes in the opposite direction to earlier times prior even to their arrival to our world. To learn more about the origins of the old ones, please press 4. Go to 24. I guess. You follow, let's see where we're at. You follow the written belts counterclockwise but reading them becomes impossible. The data is too complex for your silly little mind to comprehend. Still, you walk on until you reach something that looks like a stone throne surrounded by niches shaped like barrels drilled into the walls. On a side of the throne, there are a number of inscriptions completely different from ones that adorn the walls of the city. Cones and triangles intertwined. Oh, they have cones here? That is so different. Intertwined in a vertical writing system. On the other armrest, from an obsidian bowl, oozes a brown, sweet-smelling liquid that for some reason seems appealing to you. You can forget everything and walk back to the circular gallery on page 45, or examine the throne and its strange sweet liquid on page 18.
So I believe 45 leads to the circular gallery around the main area that we'd been before.
Yeah, it's 45 leads to the second smaller citadel, Citadel 2.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's time for glug, glug, glug.
I mean, we don't have another choice. The glug drinking the Cthulhu juice is the only new choice on this page. So sure. 18. So good.
For the love of God, what the hell are you doing, Professor?
Yells Danforth. You see the main character pull down the cup from the mouth a little bit, and there's a little dribble going down the chin. Upon seeing
He
you
just
jump,
slaps it back up, licks his lips.
upon seeing you jump into the circular throne, truth is, you don't even know what you're doing, so you don't provide an answer. The pilot's surprise turns to horror when, without warning, you pour the honey-colored liquid into your mouth and swallow it eagerly. Even if he tried to stop you, the good Danforth would never be fast enough to prevent the magic you've released. Just by feeling the runes, your body disintegrates into a mere beam of light. Residues of that forgotten knowledge of magic advocate in concepts such as space mead and by a key, the carrying beasts, are as familiar to you as a sunbeam. You travel through time and space riding a beast that under normal conditions would have driven you insane just by existing. But you've changed. From now on, you'll spend your days in the great library of Keleno, studying the lost knowledge, truths labeled as legends, and secrets whispered in the nights of the times. Sharing your days with the immortal wise men like the Clark Ashton or the great Remigo. You have paid the price of knowledge with eternity. The end.
Sick!
Sick.
There's two great endings. We absolutely can't go there, and I won't leave.
It's just, I don't think that we've had a better ending than what is encapsulated in the one sentence. You travel through time and space, riding a beast that under normal conditions would have driven you insane just by it existing. That's the best ending. I don't care.
Perfect.
I don't.
Makes up for all of the
best
violence that did not happen to any animals in this novel.
Absolutely. There we go. We have absolutely thoroughly cleaned out this whole section of the book.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, like, this is one of the structures that these books can take that, like,
True.
extremely increases the playtime of the individual book. Of, like, here is a centralized area, and then here are all of the forks from it that you still have to come back to the centralized area to coalesce and navigate. I think it makes for, like, a really, really dense setting. I really enjoyed this one, even if it is about twice as long as the previous.
Sure, I think it was also just more evocative in general. I think there's a lot of, I think the writing was better. It was certainly darker, but it also was just like, it was more immersive. It was really immersive, really deep. I enjoyed it as much as I hated it, which is a lot. I think it was good.
Yeah, and
like, I hated it in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Those things ramp up in parallel. In the first one, there was like a one death scene that was like particularly grueling, but there were a lot of sentences in this that, you know, we rewrote. And even outside of that, there were a lot of sentences that were like quite stomach turning, very, very deeply evocative.
Yeah, I thought this one was great. I thought this was really, really good. I was able to picture the whole thing way, way better with the story we were provided. And yeah, I liked the first one. I loved this one. So I'm very excited to see what the rest of them hold. And also, I can't wait to not read this one again. I'm excited that we're done at the same time. It's still like it's everything. It's good written horror in that way. Like, well, it's very well done.
So, of course, circle back to very quickly say another thanks to Edward T. Riker, author of this one.
Thank you very much. Huge thank you. And a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Hold on. I didn't process that for a second.
Hey, let me add a little retcon in here, right?
Yeah.
In the name of the golden tablet, or retconning the item that we have.
Yeah. I was like, I don't
additional
even
special
remember
thanks.
that. I don't remember that Patreon supporter, Edward T. Riker. Who is that? I guess I've been driven mad. So who is the real supporter for the episode? Edward, you can support next time.
Executive producer of this episode has been Alex K. Thank you much to Alex K for supporting over on the patreon.com/turntopagecast at or above the hardcover tier. The executive producers select for each episode, but of course we appreciate each and every person supporting the podcast either through a monetary fashion or a non-monetary fashion. Obviously the monetary fashion's obvious on the table of Patreon. Rito, could you tell us about the other ways to support?
YouTube is a great way right now, especially over at youtube.com/@turntopagecast. If you would help us out by subscribing, as soon as we get to 1,000 subscribers, we can monetize that channel, which is a way to then make everybody be financially supporting the channel just by participating on YouTube, which would be really, really nice to help keep things going. We have to buy all of these books in this season, for example, pay Sam for making the art, all of that stuff does take a bit to keep going. So yeah, the Patreon is a fantastic, very direct way. You get your little shout out like Edward T. Riker. You get your little shout out in the episode. Yes. And we greatly appreciate the help there. And you also know that you are helping to contribute towards making sure this show keeps happening. It's really, really, really helpful. But yeah, YouTube subscribing is another way to do that, especially right now, ahead of us hitting 1,000 subscribers. Otherwise, leaving comments on YouTube or leaving, reviews over on any streaming service that you're listening to the podcast on. If, however, you just want to contact us, get a message to us directly in a, private way or whatever, or you just, aren't on YouTube or anything, turntopagecast@gmail.com. You can feel free to send us email at any point. If you have something you want to be read on the air or something, mention that in the email, and we'll read it out, potentially, that kind of stuff. So, hey, thank you for listening, and we'll scare you next time. Bye-bye.